Having read the intelligence reports, Luo Feng had a rather clear understanding of the various forces operating in the open and in the shadows within Yulon City. Even the elders have to rely on the 3 hall masters, Luo Feng mused secretly. Yulon City had hundreds of millions of cultivators and millions of divine emperors. It was such a massive piece of flesh that one wouldn't be qualified to partake without substantial strength. As for a newcomer like me who doesn't stand out, I can only rely on hunting, Luo Feng smiled without taking it to heart. Having received such high rewards in the infinite space, it's clear that the infinite space itself recognized his talent. As for the future, Luo Feng was naturally confident. Luo Feng began his purchasing since he had the illusion realm maze that could store treasures. He wasn't worried about theft. After all, several million primordial crystals were a huge sum for newcomers, but among divine emperors, indeed it was nothing to mention. My goodness. Luo Feng's biomimetic eye of destruction opened between his eyebrows, observing a leaf in front of him. It was a piece of remains from a low-level primordial life known as the Chaotic Devourer, which was a rather large group of low-level primordial life, and this particular remain possessed the strength of middle stage of divine emperor. What's the lowest price for this piece of remains? Luo Feng turned to the attendant. The attendant still had a smile on his face. Each piece of remains has a detailed description and a price next to it. It is clearly stated that this piece costs 5,000 primordial crystals. Luo Feng looked at the attendant. I am asking for the lowest price. I am buying in bulk. These remains came from various sources, and different vendors had different asking prices. Naturally, Luo Feng wanted to purchase as much as possible at the lowest price. For a total purchase of 500,000 primordial crystals, you can have a 10% discount. For a total purchase of 5 million primordial crystals, you can have a discount of 15%, the attendant said. That's the lowest we can go. Luo Feng nodded. Based on the intelligence he had gathered, if the transaction volume was particularly large, of course, one could negotiate a lower price. However, his vast fortune wasn't significant enough to warrant an exception from the vendors. I'm still too poor, Luo Feng said, looking at the remains. I can only afford to buy the cheapest variety of low-level primordial life remains. Remains like a piece of scale, contain secret patterns that naturally weren't nearly as profound as the life core and other vital parts. Those important parts had uses in artifact refining and alchemy and were far too expensive. Their prices are fair. I need a batch of goods, Luo Feng said to the attendant, waving his hand, and a detailed list appeared in front of him. This list adds up to 520,000 primordial crystals. Upon hearing this, the attendant immediately beamed with joy. If their clients made a purchase, they would also benefit. A 10% discount totals 468,000 primordial crystals, the attendant said enthusiastically. I will get your goods ready right away. Luo Feng paid a pile of primordial crystals and received a storage bag filled with a large amount of cultivation materials. It took Luo Feng just one day to visit every vendor in Yulon City. Once he had determined the goods he wanted with his realm, he could naturally calculate the best way to purchase them. In the end, after spending a total of 3.22 million primordial crystals, he returned to his residence contentedly. Brother Luo Feng, in the public garden of the cave mansion, Luo Feng saw Di Fu and Emperor Ming who were drinking and chatting. Di Fu greeted him warmly. How was your first hunt outside the city? Emperor Qing has a wealth of experience and the hunt went quite well, Luo Feng smiled. Congratulations, said Emperor Ming beside them. He was somewhat envious. He too had joined a team comprised of early stage of divine emperor bloodline cultivators, who were not well regarded by the real hunting teams of Yulon City, so they had to band together. The team was still recruiting and it would probably take several epochs before setting out. I wonder what it would be like when I go hunting, Emperor Ming thought to himself. He also had plenty of intelligence about the outside of the city. On one hand, Emperor Qing provided him with information, and on the other hand, these early stage of divine emperor bloodline cultivators also exchanged information. They were generally weak and very poor. Their goal was to join forces and kill a low-level primordial life of the early stage of divine emperor. If they killed one, it would be considered a success. Because they were so poor, the plundering teams couldn't be bothered with them. Those early stage of divine emperor bloodline cultivators might have powerful friends. Killing a group of paupers would yield little and could potentially bring trouble. The plundering teams didn't want to do this kind of work. Brother Luo Feng, I found a job in the 9-ringed world tower, Di Fu said joyously. Having been in Yulon City for so long, he had finally passed the entry test of the 9-ringed world tower and found work. 9-ringed world tower? Luo Feng understood. That's a good place, congratulations. Haha, thanks to Emperor Qing for providing enough information. I also purchased some heritage knowledge from the True Witch sect and managed to pass the entry test, Di Fu said with a smile. The master of the 9-ringed world tower, who is also one of Yulon City's elders, was known for his expertise in formation in the city, ranking among the top few. However, he claimed to be a practitioner of the True Witch sect. According to the classification of Yulon City, those who haven't absorbed the primordial bloodline but ponder the essence of the Dao can also be considered a branch of the Enlightenment Seeker sect. Is Brother Luo Feng back? Emperor Qing appeared in the distance. Luo Feng nodded. Brother Luo Feng, after this hunt, I plan to go into closed-door cultivation for some time. Next hunt, perhaps in 200 to 300 epochs. Emperor Qing looked at Luo Feng. I was also planning to go into serious closed-door cultivation. Luo Feng nodded. I'll go out again after 200 to 300 epochs. Each hunt was a walk on the edge of life and death. So it's common for strong individuals from the source world to digest their harvests from each hunt before venturing out again. If they are strong beings that came from infinite worlds, they are even more cautious and careful without avatars. Alright, I will notify Brother Luo Feng after I exit closed-door cultivation. Emperor Qing smiled and nodded as he was used to habitual seclusion, each time yearning to make another step forward. Although he had already stepped into the middle stage of Divine Emperor, stepping in with the other foot still required more accumulation. Emperor Qing went into seclusion, Di Fu went to work in Yulan City's 9-ringed world tower, and Emperor Ming frequently went out to meet up with teammates, plotting a hunting expedition, albeit still in the preparation process. I am going to the Holy Mountain. Luo Feng quietly boarded an official flying boat to the Holy Mountain from Yulan City. The official flying boat costs 1,000 primordial crystals per trip, much more expensive than the price last time Emperor Qing asked for. Luo Feng silently reflected. Within the entire 9 Rivers sacred realm, there was only this official flying boat for transport once every epoch. The official flying boat would first pass through 35 cities, carrying a large number of passengers, and ultimately reach the Holy Mountain. Then it would return from the Holy Mountain carrying new cultivators and would pass through each of the 35 cities again on its return trip. The rules in the 35 cities were strict. Divine emperors could pilot their own flying boats to the Holy Mountain, but were prohibited from taking passengers. However, at the Holy Mountain, the rules of the 35 cities did not apply, as divine emperors could bring some new cultivators back to their own cities when they piloted their flying boats back. When they took passengers, the cost was generally only a tenth of the official price. After all, in terms of speed and safety, it was somewhat inferior to the official one. Emperor Qing is skilled in the Dao of spatial paths and adept in formations, daring to pilot the flying boat alone. Luo Feng thought to himself. His cultivation of the life and death path was not on par with Emperor Qing in terms of travel. Inside the official flying boat, the cabin was vast, with more than 5,000 passengers on board. Luo Feng glanced around and sensed that the majority were at the Divine Emperor level from their aura. After all, those below the Divine Emperor level were too poor. The cost of a round trip was quite expensive. The pilot of the official flying boat was a late-stage Divine Emperor bloodline cultivator, slightly stronger than Emperor Qing in terms of piloting. But this flying boat was a very special secret treasure, with a flying escape speed that was much faster. Along the way, the flying boat passed by city after city. During the journey, some cultivators disembarked, while others boarded, all with a consistent fee of 1,000 primordial crystals. Relying on the official flying boat, one can also reach any of the 35 cities. Luo Feng silently observed this scene. Even with a great detour, after merely 2 days, the flying boat had already reached the Holy Mountain. At the Holy Mountain, over half of the passengers flew out. Luo Feng looked towards the majestic Holy Mountain and also saw the deep pool at the foot of the mountain, where more than 100 figures congregated. This is the official flying boat of the 9 Rivers sacred realm. In front of the flying boat, the towering figure of the pilot-lank Divine Emperor flew out, his aura terrifying and vast. The cost per ride is 1,000 primordial crystals or an equivalent value item, lank Divine Emperor said. You can reach any city among the 35 cities of the 9 Rivers sacred realm by taking a flying boat. More than 100 figures began to board the flying boat one by one. But Luo Feng came to the deep pool at the foot of the mountain. Whoosh! He jumped down. After diving into the deep pool, Luo Feng quickly sensed a dense array of spatial coordinates, immediately locking onto the most familiar one, the land of origin. Afterwards, Luo Feng, enveloped by a droplet of water, swiftly left the 9 Rivers sacred realm. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The droplet, enveloping Luo Feng, sped through the primordial space at a high velocity. From afar, a massive source world appeared, whooshing into view and then whooshed by out of sight. Although this is the second time experiencing such a scene, it's still quite astonishing. Luo Feng admired the view outside. Following the same route as on the way here, he returned. Finally, a familiar source world appeared in his field of vision. The land of origin. Luo Feng revealed a pleased expression. In the blink of an eye, this droplet entered the interior of the land of origin. In a secluded area of the Tianji ice field on the land of origin, within the gloomy deep pool in a valley, a droplet fell into it, followed by Luo Feng flying out of the deep pool. I'm back. Luo Feng looked around. This time only an avatar had returned. His other avatars remained in Yulan City. I've brought back all the treasures I purchased. Luo Feng was quite exhilarated. A significant amount of low-level primordial life remains were far too inefficient for comprehension in the 9 Rivers sacred realm. On the land of origin, with the observance of the Eye of Life and Death, and the possibility of exchanging for treasures from the infinite space treasure vault, that was the most efficient method. With a thought, Luo Feng locked onto Huyang City distantly, and with one step he was already back in Huyang City. Inside the Star Tower, Luo Feng sat cross-legged, the Eye of Life and Death, at his brow opened, observing the densely arrayed treasures in front of him. Feathers, blood, bones, scale armor, membranes as well as leaves, branches, juices, roots and even mists, bizarre liquids and strange matters. They were varied and all obtained from low-level primordial life. Materials from the low-level primordial life during the early stage of Divine Emperor, a total of about 5,000 portions, averaging 300 primordial crystals each. In the early stage of Divine Emperor in the Nine Rivers Sacred Realm, I have collected at least 90% of all low-level primordial life materials related to life and death, Luo Feng thought. He bought everything available in Yulan City. Of course, what he bought were just some ordinary parts of low-level primordial life, since the slightly more important parts were way too expensive. From the same low-level primordial life, although one feather contains fewer secret patterns intricacies. But purchasing a dozen parts like blood, bones, and membranes, the intricacies of the secret patterns contained should be worth about 80 to 90% of that entire low-level primordial life's bloodline, Luo Feng thought. This was his poverty-style method of purchase. If extremely rich, one could directly buy a refined complete portion of a primordial bloodline, or even directly purchase a life core. Those would contain all the secret patterns intricacies of a whole low-level primordial life. Materials from the low-level primordial life during the middle stage of Divine Emperor, only 200 portions, averaging 3,500 primordial crystals each. Materials from the low-level primordial life during the later stage of Divine Emperor, only 10 portions, averaging 40,000 primordial crystals each. For the low-level primordial life at the perfect level of Divine Emperor, I only bought a bottle of ordinary blood for 390,000 primordial crystals. Luo Feng felt somewhat helpless. The more powerful the low-level primordial life, the stronger the evolution of the bloodline, especially those at the perfect level of Divine Emperor, typically strengthening to the limit and just a step away from awakening to become a high-level primordial life. Every low-level primordial life at the perfect level of Divine Emperor is extremely difficult to kill. In the entire Yulan City, only 3 Hall Masters had the hope to kill one-on-one. Moreover, these 3 Hall Masters also dared not act recklessly because these low-level primordial life creatures weren't foolish. They belonged to tribes naturally very cunning and instead might lay traps. The low-level primordial life creatures, in terms of comprehension, were much inferior to cultivators. But in terms of intelligence, they were not weaker than the average level in the land of origin. To kill them? It's one thing to kill the weakest ones at the early stage of Divine Emperor, as they were the fringe weaklings of the tribes. But those at the perfect level of Divine Emperor, who hold high positions or even as leaders within their tribes, often band together in this level. That's also why cultivators must hide within the cities. For a true group battle, cultivators are no match for low-level primordial lives. If I rely on hunting by myself, to collect such numerous materials would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. The eye of life and death at Luo Feng's brows observing the countless materials before him, but in the Nine Rivers Sacred Realm, I can easily trade. In the Yulan City of the Nine Rivers Sacred Realm, one could also purchase a large number of auxiliary cultivation items, various weapon secret treasures, and even various inheritances. But Luo Feng used most of his resources this time to purchase materials. Inheritance? As Senior Yuan said, exploring on one's own is most suited. Luo Feng truly trusted Senior Yuan. Inheritances like perfect inheritance and special grade inheritance are all forbidden from spreading content above the godly king. It was because of previous harsh lessons that made Yuan determined. Too powerful inheritances affect cultivators too much, only ruining their paths outside cultivation. Upper-class inheritance, intermediate inheritance, their influences are weaker. But there is still influence. Learning from all things, exploring the path on my own, the eye of life and death at Luo Feng's brow observed, even seemingly ordinary golden blood contained more than 10 times the intricacies of secret patterns than what he observed in Yulan City. In Yulan City, his biomimetic eye of life and death could still only be considered at the level of a divine emperor in terms of secret technique observation, able to observe only superficial levels of secret patterns. The same bottle of blood in the land of origin, viewed with the eye of life and death, revealed much more clearly. The observational power of high-level primordial life looking at some materials from low-level primordial life, almost completely sees through. Luo Feng secretly sighed, exchanging for the eye of life and death back then was really worth it. These more than 5,000 portions of low-level primordial life materials are the foundation on my path of cultivation. Luo Feng understood that researching these materials thoroughly with the eye of life and death would be immensely helpful to him. At the city owner's mansion in Huyang City, on a high tower, Morosa, a call. Startled by the sound, Morosa swiftly flew to the top of the tower, seeing its master Luo Feng who was drinking alone. Master, Morosa excitedly said, have you finished your closed-door cultivation? In Yulan City, whether it was closed-door cultivation or going out for hunting, Luo Feng usually remained in closed-door state in the land of origin. He would occasionally come out only after a period of downtime. I brought you some gifts. Luo Feng waved his hand. A complete set of weapon secret treasures flew out. Morosa looked at them excitedly, the weapon secret treasures floating in front of him. He easily refined and familiarized himself with them. Afterward, the armor merged into his body, the helmet into his skull, a pair of gloves made his claws much sharper. More formation diagrams floated nearby. A full set of 8 weapon secret treasures, all of them super secret treasures from the destruction path? Morosa was extremely excited. In the land of origin, super strong secret treasures above the godly king were very rare. And those suitable for one's own path even more so. Like the set of weapon secret treasures Luo Feng obtained by killing Di Yuan, ultimately all were sold. It was because they did not match his own path. Master, this is perfect for me. This set of secret treasures allows me to glimpse the path above godly king. Morosa adored these treasures. You have hopes for a breakthrough? Luo Feng was surprised. No hope. Morosa shook his head helplessly, seeing the path above Godly King. I understand even more the difficulty of the path. I've lost all hope. Morosa grinned. However, with these weapon secret treasures, my strength will surge dramatically. On the land of origin, apart from you few divine emperors, I am confident I can suppress the others. Even the Lord of 10,000 Realms, in terms of weapon secret treasures, couldn't compare comprehensively to Morosa. Luo Feng smiled and nodded. Go on, go on. He often secluded himself for cultivation on land of origin, and Morosa was the strongest under his command. Whether it was the Galaxy Divine Kingdom or Blade River Sect, many matters needed Morosa to preside over. With a full set of weapon secret treasures, it would better deter those emperors and monarchs. Of course, on another note, Morosa also had his fair share of merit points in hardship, which was considered a form of reward. A complete set of early-stage Divine Emperor-level secret treasures, really a bargain, Luo Feng thought. These weapon secret treasures, which were all at the early stage of Divine Emperor, were used by those below Divine Emperor in Yulan City. Only the armor and formation diagrams were slightly more expensive. The entire set of weapon secret treasures totaled only 35,000 primordial crystals. This time, Luo Feng provided Morosa, Blade River Sect disciples, friends, and family a total of 100,000 primordial crystals worth of weapon secret treasures and other supporting treasures. Their strength was weak. It was enough to buy the cheapest ones in Yulan City. In Yulan City, those treasures and medicines painstakingly refined by God Kings at their ultimate stage were sold at very low prices, earning just a little for their hard work. It's not that I'm reluctant. Buying 2 good weapon secret treasures, Morosa, you can't utilize them anyway. Luo Feng said with a smile. As for other treasures, there was no hurry. There had to be a sufficient reason to give away treasures. For example, disciples meriting awards, stepping into a new level of strength, only then it would be appropriate to give. One cannot grant them without reason. Both the ancestors of the 2 ancient countries demanded exchange with merit points. As for preparing gifts for Master Emperor Qu, ordinary treasures, as Emperor Flame Wind of Flame Wind ancient country, Master Emperor Qu already owned them. Too precious? Luo Feng was still relatively poor at the moment, deciding instead to hunt a few more times and become wealthier before preparing some gifts for his master. Luo Feng believed a millennium or 2 of time, his master could afford to wait. My life and death Dao has reached the ultimate, it's time to collect reward points. Luo Feng thought. Infinite space at Lake Heart Island. Luo Feng stood by the lake, starting to practice the life and death Dao. The complete life and death Dao, after fully comprehending it, allowed many techniques to be executed effortlessly and naturally. Palm World. A massive and vast illusory palm appeared, larger than the entire Lake Heart Island, and within the center of the palm, a world was born. Luo Feng was now inside this palm world. As if the creator divine spirit within this world, he effortlessly displayed ultimate realm secret techniques, forming forbidden moves. Suddenly, Luo Feng sensed a piece of information transmitted from the palm mark. Infinite space finally confirmed my breakthrough. Luo Feng smiled, then checked the message. Trialist, Luo Feng from the land of origin. You have pioneered a complete new great Dao. This Dao, based on life and death and destruction, fundamentality surpasses ordinary great Daos. New great Dao evaluation, perfect. Reward points, 200,000 points. You have obtained all the reward points issued for pioneering the great Dao. Before escaping the braided cage, if your spiritual will manages to escape first, you'll also get the highest reward points for spiritual will. Since the establishment of infinite space, those who obtain the highest rewards for both pioneering a great Dao and spiritual will are still less than 100. Over 70% of them have already escaped the braided cage. Reminder, prohibited from killing any spiritual beings, violators will be completely expelled from infinite space. Total reward points, 254,093.03 points. Luo Feng felt excited. 200,000 reward points? It made him much wealthier instantly, considering Eye of Life and Death, which was hugely beneficial for his cultivation path, was only 120,000 reward points. Now he could exchange for 2 similar treasures. Obviously, Senior Yuan and others gave more rewards to those with higher talent. Pioneering a great Dao, spiritual will both obtaining the highest rewards, still less than 100 to date? Over 70% escaped the braided cage. Luo Feng pondered. The unsuccessful 20+%. Either died or still undergoing cultivation. The proportion escaping the braided cage is indeed high. Being at the level of Divine Emperor, yet spiritual will needs to escape the braided cage? Luo Feng knew, those at the late stage of Divine Emperor, half-primordial level enlightenment beings, their spiritual will should have reached the perfect level of Divine Emperor. Reaching this extreme bottleneck, almost all were like this in the dark sacred realm. But spiritual will escaping the braided cage? That's legendary. I'd like to see how difficult it is for the spiritual will to escape the braided cage. Luo Feng was not in a rush, his current spiritual will had not yet touched the limits of the Divine Emperor level. Luo Feng gazed at the infinite space treasure vault, where the information on various treasures was even more abundant. I don't have absolute certainty, and while still in the Divine Emperor stage, my spiritual will is trying to break free from the braided cage, thought Luo Feng. So the more than 250,000 reward points may be all the reward points I'll ever have. I need to reserve enough reward points for use when I reach the half-primordial level in the future. Luo Feng pondered. At present, my realm is too low, and I am not clear on what is most needed to break free from the braided cage. It would be most appropriate to exchange for treasures when reaching the half-primordial level in the future. Just buy one that is relatively inexpensive. Luo Feng's gaze swept over the cheaper treasures, and he instantly locked onto a target. Exchange for the secret treasure, Undying Heart. Luo Feng immediately exchanged. The secret treasure, Undying Heart, unbreakable with endless vitality, can also reinforce the physical body. It can also condense an additional powerful war body. Suitable for the cultivation of both the life and destruction paths, requires 43,000 reward points to exchange. Among the treasures below 100,000 reward points, this is the only one suitable for both the life and destruction paths. The weapon secret treasures sold in Yulan City are generally crafted by divine emperors. Even the perfect level divine emperor secret treasures. Once Luo Feng reaches the half-primordial level himself, perhaps his realm will be even stronger than the creators, and the help those treasures can offer will naturally be minimal. But these treasures in the infinite treasure vault, from their characteristics, all seem to have been created by beings that have broken free from the braided cage. After the exchange, Luo Feng's reward points in the infinite space were reduced to 211,093.03 points. According to Luo Feng's own cultivation plans, he would exchange more when he reached the half-primordial level in the future. In the land of origin, within the Huyang City Lord's mansion, inside a quiet room within the Star Tower, both countries' ancestors would specially construct places for secluded cultivation, but Luo Feng did not need to because the inside of the Star Tower was the safest place. Undying Heart. Luo Feng sat cross-legged, looking at the green pearl in his hand. The eye of life and death between his brows opened and saw the endless secret patterns within the green pearl, profound to the extreme, not inferior to the special life remnants. He dimly saw a drop of blazing blood, from which all the mysterious secret patterns originated. This pearl must have been crafted with a drop of blood as its core. Judging by the sophistication of that drop of blood, it should be a blood dripping from a world-level primordial life form. Hence, this pearl possesses endless vitality and is unbreakable. The power originating from a world-level primordial life makes it natural to call it endless vitality, unbreakable, at the divine emperor level. This undying heart is enough for me to ponder before breaking free from the braided cage. Luo Feng was very satisfied. The infinite space treasure vault, the two treasures best suited to me, the eye of life and death and the undying heart, I have exchanged for both. Of course, there are some other treasures in the infinite space that aid in cultivation. For instance, there is a seedling which, when planted, grows into a tree under which cultivation takes place, constantly emerging with spirit light, one day equal to 1,000 or 10,000 ordinary days of cultivation, occasionally even entering a state of sudden enlightenment. For instance, there is the wisdom book. The wisdom tree itself can analyze everything, study the great Tao and aid one's cultivation. Much more powerful than the eye of life and death. These were all discovered by Luo Feng after his reward points exceeded 250,000. There are infinite treasures but reward points are limited. I must understand how to use them more effectively. Luo Feng was very calm. Undying Heart, Eye of Life and Death, Star Tower. From low to high, I can also better understand how life and death intertwine. First grasp how to combine, then how to fuse. Luo Feng flipped his hand and took out a primordial crystal, consuming it and began to ponder the densely packed low-level primordial life materials. With the observation of the Eye of Life, these low-level primordial life materials revealed no secrets before Luo Feng, because in the Nine Rivers Sacred Realm, for the early stage of Divine Emperor lower primordial life forms, Luo Feng had at least 90% here. So many types allowed Luo Feng to glimpse the various possibilities of the life and destruction paths. Life and destruction actually have such vast branches? Luo Feng was somewhat shocked and he even felt somewhat bewildered. He once had boundless passion. He had determination. He wanted to embrace all the mysteries of life and destruction, integrating them into his own life and death Tao. But when he actually saw the sheer amount of these mysteries, with various mysteries entwined and many of them outright contradictory, Luo Feng felt bewildered and hesitant. Could they be completely embraced and perfectly merged into one Tao? Is it possible? Could he achieve it? The more I understand, the higher and more extensive I realize the sky is. Luo Feng smiled. This is what makes it interesting. Luo Feng's eyes blazed. This path is infinitely long. It means I can keep moving forward, climbing higher and higher. Then take it step by step. Walk on the road to becoming stronger. The process of becoming stronger is also fascinating. Luo Feng's heart settled in that moment. You have to eat your meal one bite at a time. That's how you digest it well. Luo Feng then began to carefully study these materials, analyzing each one carefully, classifying some of the mysterious secret patterns. Then slowly absorbing some suitable for his own path. Returning to the source continent in the 105th epoch, Luo Feng's life path naturally reached the early stage of Divine Emperor as he pursued the vast life form route. In the 139th epoch, the destruction path also reached the early stage of Divine Emperor while pursuing the ultimate route of destruction. Life and destruction have both reached the early stage of Divine Emperor. Hence, Luo Feng slowed down the pace in these two aspects and concentrated on the life and destruction fusion. For him, the cultivation of the paths of life and destruction provides the most basic sustenance for the great Tao of life and death. Thus, according to the needs of the life and death Tao, the directions of life and destruction should be determined. Reaching the early stage of Divine Emperor for both life and destruction, if the difficulty is 1, then attaining the early stage of Divine Emperor for the life and destruction fusion would be at least 10 times harder. Luo Feng felt the hardship of the fusion process. The great Tao of life and death, at the ultimate realm of Godly King, is the fusion of 9 major branches, which is the seed. A strong seed will naturally sprout a larger and more majestic tree. Before he knew it, it was already the 269th epoch, and Luo Feng's life and death Tao still had many confusions, having not reached the early stage of Divine Emperor. At this time, Emperor Qing had already begun inviting Luo Feng for another hunt. Hunting? I just need a bit more time to prepare, I can set out within 1 epoch. Luo Feng replied to Emperor Qing's invitation. Emperor Qing naturally had no objections. Just because he had concluded his seclusion and was ready to hunt, didn't mean Luo Feng was also adequately prepared. Being able to set out within 1 epoch, Luo Feng was already quick enough. Sigh. Back in the land of origin, Luo Feng, with a physical body carrying an energy reserve 390 times that of the perfect divine body, as well as the storage secret treasure, illusion realm maze, began his return journey. As for the undying heart, exchanged in the infinite space, Luo Feng did not bring it along. Being relatively weak, carrying too powerful a secret treasure might instead invite trouble. Besides, going on hunts repeatedly when weak could easily lead to death. Only when he could match the low-level primordial life at the perfect level of Divine Emperor would he carry the undying heart. It would be much safer. By then, his strength might be close to that of the 3 Hall Masters, and even if he couldn't defeat them, he would at least have the power to protect himself. Back in the land of origin, with the help of a small universe, absorbing energy is still fast. Carrying a massive energy reserve, Luo Feng spent nearly half an epoch and finally returned to Yulan City. Going back and forth between the land of origin and 9 Rivers Sacred Realm. On one hand, he could transport many resources to the land of origin to observe with the eye of life and death. On the other hand, he could also bring over the energy reserves absorbed by the land of origin. All he had to pay was merely the travel expenses. Let's set out. Both parties being well prepared, Emperor Qing and Luo Feng began their team's second hunting expedition. What? You've made a breakthrough? During the killing of the first low-level primordial life, the power displayed by Luo Feng when he made his move stunned Emperor Qing. Luo Feng killing the prey one-on-one was not surprising to him. But doing so with such ease and casualness left Emperor Qing somewhat flabbergasted. You've reached the middle stage of Divine Emperor? Emperor Qing could hardly believe it as he looked at Luo Feng, whose might just then was no less than Emperor Qing using a formation diagram. Emperor Qing, who had struggled for so long, was 1 step into the middle stage of Divine Emperor. Yet the other foot was still stuck outside. The breakthrough seemed just a little bit away, but this little bit had already stalled him for a long time. Luo Feng? Reached the middle stage of Divine Emperor after just several hundred epochs in Yulan City? No, Luo Feng shook his head and explained, I cultivate both the Daos of life and destruction, and now both Daos have reached the early stage of Divine Emperor. The combined power of the 2 paths is what makes it so strong. Cultivating both Daos? And they complement each other so exquisitely? Emperor Qing understood completely. Those who cultivate 2 Daos are generally much stronger. However, for 2 Daos in the early stage of Divine Emperor to compete with a normal middle stage Divine Emperor cultivator, they must combine quite well. If the combination is poor, the increase in strength is also limited. Luo Feng, having studied the life and death Tao for so long, was researching the method of fusion, the mere combination. Naturally, it was extremely exquisite. I always thought, brother Luo Feng, that since you've just arrived in the 9 Rivers Sacred Realm, I'd need to help you at first. Who would have thought that just on our second hunt, it's you who are helping me instead? Emperor Qing shook his head. We will need to discuss the distribution of our spoils of war again. I don't have many secret treasures, only this pair of gloves. Luo Feng shook his head. My strength is only slightly stronger than brother Emperor Qing's. After all, Emperor Qing had been adventuring in Yulan City for a long time and was wealthier. His secret treasure array map compensated for some of his realm's shortcomings. Emperor Qing looked at Luo Feng and laughed. So be it, the next time we go hunting, we'll need to discuss the distribution ratio again. He was clear in his heart. Even with the secret treasure array map's explosive power comparable to Luo Feng had multiple avatars. The might unfolded by the Daos of life and destruction during the hunt was terrifying. LuoFeng's contribution to the hunt had already greatly surpassed Emperor Qing's. Next time we'll discuss the ratio again, but when the gap grows even larger, I'm afraid we'll have to split up. Emperor Qing was aware of this fact. He now still serves a purpose in the team. His formation ability was extremely useful during the hunts. Taking a third of the spoils was not unfair. If Luo Feng reached the early stage of Divine Emperor earlier, and now both paths are at the early stage. That's the case for such transformation, Emperor Qing pondered. If he wants a significant increase in strength, it will probably take a long time. There's no need to think too much about it for now. This second hunt was full of mixed feelings for Emperor Qing. After all, he had become the one providing support. This hunt went unprecedentedly smoothly, having encountered no danger and stopping after killing 9 early-stage Divine Emperor low-level primordial lives. When we come out to hunt, 9 is the limit, Emperor Qing said. Beyond that, the risks will skyrocket. We might even attract the attention of low-level primordial lives at the perfect stage of Divine Emperor. Alright, then we return. Luo Feng was quite receptive to advice. Although his strength was somewhat stronger now, Emperor Qing's hunting experience was much richer than his. Luo Feng felt that even an equal split of the spoils was justified, relying purely on the other's veteran experience. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and turn on the notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming great videos.